Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to the program. It's your host, Danny Haifong. We have a great show for you today. We are talking about Europe being in trouble as it assumes the primary face of a U.S.-led war against Russia. One of NATO's biggest members just failed in a dangerous operation to steal a MiG-31 fighter jet armed with a Kinjal hypersonic missile. Our next guest has direct experience working in Europe's biggest NATO country to pull away from a catastrophic war with Russia and is here to help us understand the declining and dangerous path Europe is taking under the direction of a Trump-led United States empire. I have the honor of introducing for the first time Sevim Dagdelen. She is a former member of the German Bundestag, German parliament, and is a foreign policy expert based in Berlin. Sevim, good to meet you. Thank you so much for taking the time out.
Thanks for having me, Danny.
You're also the author of a great book, which people can find in the video description, called NATO, A Reckoning with the Atlantic Alliance. Now, Sevim, I wanted to talk about, there was this, and I know that you've been covering from Germany, especially these dangerous moves made by NATO, with Germany being a major player in it, dangerous moves made to escalate a war with Russia. Now, there is this plot that was foiled by Russia, claiming, this is what Russia is claiming, for a Ukrainian-British plot to steal a MiG-31 armed with a Kinjal missile. Essentially, the pilot was not working with the Ukrainian and British intelligence services that were trying to get the plane stolen and taken to Romania in a bid, what seems to be a way to both study and steal Russian information, but also to escalate and provoke a larger war with Russia, which has been the overall path from, as you are very familiar with, the Nord Stream pipeline in a terrorist attack, to, of course, this long war now in Ukraine. Talk about some of the work you've been doing, how you react to these dangerous maneuvers that NATO has been making, and what the role is, in your estimation, especially of Germany and the rest of NATO in this larger shifting world order. How have you been seeing this, and talk about your work a bit?
Yeah, thanks, Danny. Well, I do believe that we live in really extremely dangerous times. Our German defense minister, Boris Pistorius from the Social Democratic Party, for example, can no longer say whether we are still at peace or already at war. That's what he said. And leading politicians in the governing coalition now in Germany are calling for the declaration of a state of tension, and nothing less than the path to a dictatorship, because with a state of tension, fundamental rights of freedom of speech, freedom of the press, of your own apartment, of your house, would be suspended. And this state of tension is a preparation for entering war against Russia, designed to preemptively silence all protests against the coming conflict. And NATO is doing whatever they do always, and always have been doing. They are doing wars, they are doing proxy wars, they are doing regime change moves, and we can see with Ukraine, the war in Ukraine, they are losing this war. It was from the beginning clear that it's not a war for the West to win. It's not able to win this war against this nuclear power, Russia. But NATO wanted to, as the German former foreign policy minister said once, Annalena Baerbock, who is now, unfortunately, the president of the UN General Assembly, poor to the global south, she once stated in 2022, when Ukraine war started, that we are in a war with Russia, and the aim is to ruin Russia. And now we can see, after 3 years, we are not winning the war. Russia is winning militarily this war, and we are not ruining and destroying Russia. we are destroying the German economy, the European economy, and just for the profit of the military-industrial complex, whether it is in Germany or it is in the US. And NATO is massively rearming now and expanding into Asia throughout bilateral military pacts, and they are now in Germany. I really have to say this, they are preparing for war, because Germany at the moment is preparing the military draft. We don't have the draft, but they want to introduce the military draft. They want to, because the US administration wants more German soldiers. That's the reason. I mean, you really have to say the militarism. And as far as I know, some experts in the US are talking about the new militarization of Germany as if it is their own original idea. I think the people have to know this militarism is desired from outside, because the US demands the 5% of the GDP for military. 5% of the GDP in Germany means 225 billion euro per year. And just to show you what that means, in Germany, we have the national budget of Germany is about 500 billion. So 25 billion for military would mean the half of the national budget would be expended for military. And US wanted this, and Germany jumps. And the US wants more German soldiers, and the federal government, Germany, wants to introduce the draft. They jump again. So it's a desire from outside as well, and this has its own dynamic. And as you have shown this news, I mean, I was a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee and Defense, and we had so much intelligence information as well. And we know that since the beginning of this war, there is intelligence support, there is military support, there is financial support. So it is literally a proxy war of NATO against Russia here.
Yeah. And, you know, in this story, Sevim, in this development that Russia claims it has foiled this plot, one of the key things that struck me was $3 million was offered. $3 million US was
they
offered. They
must be very desperate.
That's what I'm saying. Like, what does this mean to you? If 3 million and it wasn't taken. This did not happen. The plane wasn't stolen. The Kinjal missile is still secure with Russia. It didn't go over NATO airspace like they wanted, which some claim might have been an attempt to institute almost like a crisis situation, which, as you may know, Sevim, as you probably have been paying attention to, NATO in Germany, Belgium, so many countries have been saying that Russia is now flying drones into airspace. No evidence, no proof of this, but they're saying now Russia is preparing for a hybrid war on Europe. I mean, what do you make of these claims from inside Germany? How do you see this, given that, as you said, the Ukraine war is being lost, and yet Europe is doubling down, it seems, on behalf of the United States to own this war and to even make it bigger?
Yeah, I think it's always the same in the history that people and populations, they do not want to go to war. You have to be lied to them to bring them into the situation that they are in, favoring wars. And that's why I think it's the first duty we have. Do not let the war propaganda fool ourselves. It's just propaganda, and we have seen it with the thesis, the performance of Colin Powell at the UN Security Council regarding the thesis of the lie of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. We know this from the lies of before attacking the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia in 1999 by the NATO. We know this with Tonkin. So every time they lie to bring the people on the track in favor of a war, and that's what they're doing now. They know on the ground they are losing the war in Ukraine, and they are so desperate that they are offering 3 million to a Russian pilot. And the other way, they are claiming on German media every day that Russia is doing a war, a hybrid war, as if NATO is not doing a hybrid war, for instance, but and a cognitive war, for example. I mean, they are aiming on the brains of the people. In Rome, for example, in Italy, they have their own college on this, trying to get the heads of the people, not only on the field, on the ground. You are having a war. The most important war is the war of propaganda. So that's why they are trying to exercise this on their fairy tales about Russian drones, or Russian rockets or missiles in Poland, in Estonia, in Norway, in Denmark, in Germany, all over the place, without any proofs, and this is only propaganda, because still, after 3 years of time of propaganda and warmongering, the German population, they do not want a majority a war against Russia. That's the fact, and they desperately try to change these kind of facts.
Yeah, and Sevim, I don't know if you have also been following. There are major military exercises now in preparation for a so-called war that Russia is aiming for, apparently. And it's happening in Sweden, and CBS News here in the United States, the big monopoly here in the United States, said that they watched as they prepared against an enemy submarine for covert espionage and a sabotage mission in the Baltic Sea against America's NATO allies in Northern Europe. That's what they're claiming. And Commander Arlo Abramson, a U.S. Navy officer who is a spokesperson for the maritime headquarters, said NATO is a defensive alliance as they conduct these drills. Talk about the genesis of how, at this point, many who watch this program, Sevim, are saying, it looks like more and more that the European countries, especially the Western European countries, Germany and others that are in NATO, are essentially assuming the leadership role at the behest of the United States over this part of the U.S.'s overall foreign policy agenda vis-a-vis Russia.
I don't believe, I don't support these kind of illusions or this kind of propaganda that NATO, that Europe is going to be replacing US, or there are also even rumors. Some so-called experts are saying that there is a danger that US would pull out from NATO. That's really dumb, I think, because the NATO is the instrument of the US hegemony and their global approach. And this is the reason why they implemented and founded NATO. It's just a tool for them, for especially nowadays, to stop their own decline. And that's all about, actually, in geopolitics and worldwide now what's going on. Of course, we have in some parts, like in the eastern flank, that Germany is now being responsible for NATO's eastern flank, and now they are sending 5,000 German soldiers there, a tank group. But it's totally silly and stupid, because in war times of drones, the tanks cannot last very long. So that's not the art of war at the time. But the only thing I think what is important is to know that the Trump administration, and even the Biden, every U.S. administration, but the Trump administration nowadays is implementing Brzezinski's bridgehead concept. So Europe, and Germany in particular, is to serve as the US bridgehead against Russia. And on the Eurasian chessboard, Germany is being used as a pawn sacrifice in an American gambit to ruin Russia. And this raises serious problems. So through its massive rearmament and sanctions against Russia, for example, Germany is destroying itself. It's a suicidal policy, what is going on in Europe and especially in Germany. And the US is shifting ever more costs of its proxy war into Germany. So Germany is to take over NATO's Eastern Front, as I said, for the US, and is therefore rebuilding a mass army. Like I said, the military draft is coming, and the only major EU member state to do so, so that the US can focus more intensively on China, their main enemy, what they say now. And at the same time, however, the US is pushing Germany and the European Union to impose sanctions, for example, on China, even as it has already reached an initial agreement with Beijing. So the result is a grave threat to Europe as an industrial location. And through their vassal status, the vassalage to the United States, Europe and Germany have withdrawn from global politics. And the German elites, they dream of a war against a nuclear power Russia. And I think it is an apocalyptic dream because and it's very irresponsible. And the reason for that is also that US administration is pushing Europe and Germany into this front war.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you could talk about how this has happened, because when I was thinking about this incident of the UK, you know, Russia often says the UK is one of the principal architects of the Ukraine conflict, but of course the United States relationship with the UK is exactly as you said. It's one of master and junior, partner, master and vassal. How did this happen then for Europe? I know the UK doesn't consider itself Europe, but I can't bring myself to say the UK is separate from Western Europe or anything like that. It's a NATO member. It's one of the leaders. How do you see how Europe got to this point? A lot of people who watch this show say Europe has been crumbling. It's been going backward economically. And it's becoming more and more indebted to the US militarily, economically, etc. How did this happen?
Yeah, first of all, I mean, I think that it started after the attack of the coalition of the willing led by the US government against Iraq. In this war, the German government said no to the US invasion, to the attack on Iraq. And as you can remember, maybe Rumsfeld was talking about old Europe, new Europe, because it was the German Chancellor Scholz and the French President Jacques Chirac, who said, no, we are not joining this aggression. And there was a disappointment within the transatlantic think tanks, transatlantic elites in the US about the elites in Germany. And then it started, I think, a really big approach towards Germany and Europe to get the elites on board a little bit more strong on a transatlantic track. And so we do have and I know that because in the global South or in the US, people are asking themselves, how is it possible that such a country like Germany can do such a suicidal policy of economics? I mean, they are destroying their own economy. They are threatening their own security in doing a little bit more of the proxy war against Russia. I mean, because the Ukraine war, as much as it's lost for NATO, as much it is, it takes the risk of an escalation for World War III. because if NATO is not accepting that they have been defeated by Russia, that they lost this war, although they put so much arms into this war and so much intelligence and financial support, maybe they can, they just go forward for doing more escalation. So it has the risk. And the thing is, how can it be? The thing is, in Germany, in politics, in media, and in the economy, we have a big influence of transatlantic thinking. For example, we do have 40 DAX industries, companies. DAX means the German Stock Exchange companies. The biggest shareholder of all stock exchange German companies are US investment funds like BlackRock or Morgan Stanley. So there is no real German economy anymore. The German economy is hijacked by US American investment funds, and they are deciding because they are the biggest shareholders. First, the second thing is in the media, in the mainstream media. In the mainstream media, the most chief editors or editors for foreign policy are in the same time members of US American think tanks like German Marshall Fund, Atlantic Council, or the Council of Atlantic, European Council of Foreign Policy, where a lot of people are from the transatlantic think tanks from the US, or US thinking or very close to the US thinking experts in Germany. And they are mixed up with foreign policy makers, lawmakers from the economy and so on, like the Atlantic Bridge in Germany, like the DAGAP and so on, because I know them. I have been there a very long time in these councils. And I can tell you, sometimes I got the feeling when someone was talking about foreign policy and security policy, as if they would read from a briefing from the Pentagon. I got the impression that they are reading a briefing from the Pentagon, bullet points from the Pentagon, from the State Department. Or the other thing is in politics, we have, the most influential politicians in Germany. Like I said, the former German foreign minister, she is from the World Economic Forum, one of the trainings, I think. She got a training there. And for example, our German Chancellor Friedrich Merz is the biggest achievement of the US investment fund BlackRock, because he was the chair of the Council of BlackRock in Germany. Can you imagine this? And this guy is now the German chancellor. So that means you have a very shortcut as a US investment fund, very shortcut to the German government. And there are a lot of politicians, lawmakers who are members in these kind of think tanks. And these think tanks, they are not representing or fulfilling the interests of their own population, their own interest. My impression, my observation since years is that they are representing the interests of the US and not the interests of the German population. And this is why we are in this situation now, that the German industry is collapsing at the moment. The German industry is collapsing. We have, since the beginning of the Ukraine war, we had to stop the energy from the cheap energy, which is one of the keys why the German welfare state functioned, and the industry and the prosperity was working in Germany, because we had the cheap energy from Russia. That was the reason. And it's a pillar of the German economy. And now we stop the energy, the cheap energy, and now getting liquid gas, the dirty and very expensive gas from the US. So since the beginning of the Ukraine war, for example, we have skyrocketing high prices on energy. We have a plus of 77%, 77% plus in the energy prices since 2022. So the economy is collapsing. We have in the first half of this year, 2025, we have already 12,000 company bankruptcies. Yeah, companies who are now bankrupt, 12,000. Just the first half of this, we have more than 50,000 jobs lost in the car industry just last year, and more than 100,000 of jobs are at risk, at stake at the moment, because also of the tariffs from the US, and also US is pushing us in a confrontation against our biggest trading partner, China, at the moment. So that's why we are facing at the moment this collapse of Germany.
Yeah, talk about how before we move on to a different arena, how does one, you were in the German Parliament, you're very active in politics there. How does one fight back against this? Because from the outside looking in, a lot of people see that there is almost like this intractable grip that the U.S. and all the Mercs and those who so willingly follow along with the U.S. line. I mean, we in 2020, 2023 was it 2022, 2023? There was the Nord Stream bombing, and we had the German, head of state come here and essentially
he was smiling.
Not make anything of it. Yeah, he was smiling at it. He was smiling. So how does one fight back against this?
Biden was, as the US President, Biden was standing next to him and was saying, we will finish Nord Stream 2 if the war will start. It was end of 2021. And right. Our German chancellor was just smiling that the US president is announcing publicly to do a terrorist attack on our own infrastructure or our own energy sovereignty. And this is actually the picture of Germany, the picture of vassalage, the picture of being a vassal of the United States. People say United States and their allies. No, United States is not interested in having allies. The United States is just interested in having vassals or slaves. That's the thing what they are interested in. And that's what I'm trying to say, my comrades, my colleagues here, my friends. And I think the key issue to stop the German decline is to recognize the realities of an upcoming multipolar world globally in the world, and to have a really good relations to the BRIC states and the global South, to have a diversity in our economy. That means less dependent from the US, and we have to look for a neutral status. We have, the key problem is our relation to the United States, militarily, financially, and especially the military thing. And we have to become more independent, we have to have an emancipation from the United States. It's like the situation of the 1970s with USA versus Latin America. We need the emancipation from the United States to stop this collapse of the German economy, and not only the economy, also the danger of risking escalation with nuclear powers like Russia.
Yeah, and perhaps we can get to now. You published a piece that was republished in our mutual friend Ben Norton's Geopolitical Economy Report, where you talk about Germany is sabotaging its relations with China on behalf of Washington. It's interesting. The Atlantic Council has written a piece that doesn't necessarily emulate the points you make, Sevim, but it does talk about how Germany has shifted from a relationship of what they say win-win to strategic competition. And I wanted you to comment on Germany and, you know, its role as a leader in both NATO and the European Union, and how it has, in these all arenas, we've talked about Russia, but also when it comes to China and also West Asia and its deep support of Israel, which we were talking about before the show. How has this foreign policy trajectory contributed to maybe the opposite of what you hope for, which is a bigger relationship with the multipolar world, a deeper relationship with it?
I didn't get the question.
Oh, could you not
Sorry.
hear me? Okay.
Yeah,
we
I
seem to be
can
having
hear
some.
you. I can hear you.
Okay. Okay.
It was
Essentially,
just
what I was asking. Yeah. Sorry.
Mm.
I think we might be having a little bit of some connection problems.
Yeah.
But I was essentially just asking in terms of Germany in these other areas when it comes to China and its move from a more cooperative relationship, win-win relationship, to a quote-unquote competitive relationship or aggressive posture towards China, as well as what it is doing in West Asia vis-a-vis Gaza and the rest of the region. How has this contributed to Germany's decline, the issues that you see really boiling over regarding Germany and the rest of Europe?
Yeah, I think this is another piece of this chessboard game of the United States. I mean, the United States hegemony is in a decline, and I think it's irreversible. So my analysis is it's irreversible, and in the same time, it's irreversible the rise of China and the BRICS states and their project of de-dollarization, and to have a just economy actually and a financial system in the world, to implement a just system. And the US is trying to push their so-called allies in Europe and within the NATO states to whether to contain Russia, like they say, to ruin Russia, but ruining is not working. So at least to try to contain Russia, and in the same time they're trying to put or push them to the front in their confrontational politics towards China, for example. So China is the biggest trading partner of Europe. China is the biggest trading partner, with some ups and downs because depending on the tariffs of the United States towards Europe, it depends, but it's changing sometimes. US, but mostly at the moment, actually, it's China. Again, the biggest trading partner of Germany, and US wants to get rid of their competitors. Of course, Europe is a competitor or was a competitor, and also Germany was a competitor. Germany was a few years the biggest export nation of the world. So they want to get rid of it, and that's why they are pushing us in a confrontational situation with China. For example, the Netherlands, what they have done lately to shut down Nexperia or take it from the Chinese, and it was clear that it was on behalf of US, and but China is a very strict country in international relations of reciprocity. So in international politics, always China is looking for reciprocity. That means whenever you do one step against them, they are approving the step against you. So, and it has to be appropriate then in their view. And they have done their steps. They have taken their steps regarding the raw materials towards Europe. and then they get Netherlands experience how powerful China is on the long run, and so they gave it back to China again, the company Nexperia. So what I want to tell you is we as Germany and Europe, we have to look what our interests are. And China views US and Europe with great skepticism. And I was very lately in China, and I see it is very much prepared for provocation of all kinds. And that is also a major difference from the West. They think in a very long term, and like Netherlands proved it now, the Europeans don't think in a long term. They just think in a short term, and that is a disadvantage for us. We should look for our economy and our profits and our not only profits. I think a win-win situation would be the best for China and Europe, and China and Germany. But that means we have to get rid of a US administration which is trying to put some trouble into the relationship between Germany and China.
Yeah. And, earlier, before we got on, Sevim, you were talking about Germany's relationship in West Asia. It appears that Germany and the rest of Europe is kind of a quote unquote bloc of vassals around the United States' leadership. They've been going all in, it seems, with everything that the United States has been pursuing globally. Talk about what Germany's role is in this region, and what motivates Germany to be so close to both the U.S. and Israel when it comes to their dealings and their, war crimes, genocidal war crimes in the region.
Well, unfortunately, Germany is not in a good role, not playing a good role at all in China or in the Asian region. For example, the German Foreign Minister Johann Wadepool was actually was about to travel to China, and then he canceled this trip to China because he has no counterparts. He has no counterparts, and I actually understand this, because in Beijing there is this great skepticism towards the European vassal states, because in the end they know they only do what Washington wants, and the impression arises there that no reliable agreements can be made with them anymore. And because German foreign minister, for example, he was his first trip to Asia was to Japan. And you have to know, German-Japanese history goes back to the Nazi time. And the German fascism and Japanese militarism, they worked very strongly together. In 1936, German Nazi Hitler Germany, they made a contract, anti-Comintern pact with Japan. Later, the Italian fascist Mussolini joined this anti-Comintern pact. This anti-Comintern pact means against socialism, against Soviet Union, against communism, to fight together, to stop communism and socialism. So Germany then made 1937, for example, with Japan, an intelligence treaty, a secret treaty to destabilize Soviet Union, to destabilize socialist countries, and so on. And that's why, for example, also the Japanese militarism attacked China, and in the Second World War, Hitler and German fascism attacked Soviet Union, and they worked together. So German fascism and Japanese militarism, they worked together in Second World War, and Soviet Union and China worked together against this fascist war, the fascist World War II. and they had the victory over this fascism. And Wadepool is going to Japan in summertime. He goes to Japan and makes the announcement that always Germany and Japan will have a premium partnership, a strategic partnership, and was accusing China from Japan, accusing China to play a bad role in the Chinese Sea and in the Pacific. And I think it's very remarkable, you know, you are a German foreign minister visiting Japan and talking about and accusing blaming our biggest trading partner, China, from Japanese soil. So the Chinese diplomacy, the Chinese government were not amused, of course. And I think this is symbolic that they have the German diplomacy and German administrations in the West, they are dysfunctional at the moment. They don't know to do diplomacy anymore. That's a fact we are facing here, and that's one of the challenges that we have to do diplomacy with the countries to have good relations. And this is apparently not possible with this current German government, because this government thinks in black and white, thinks in the older historical bad influences, like the German minister, you know, he said in the beginning of this year, the German foreign minister, that Russia will be an eternal enemy for Germany, for example, after Second World War, with more than 27 million deaths and victims of the Soviet Union, just defeating German fascism. And I think this shows us that they are not capable of doing diplomacy.
What do you think the long term? Sorry.
Just a second. Just to add one thing, Germany's role in the Asian region is also bad, because they are doing multilateral contracts with Philippines, for example, with Singapore, just to support them in their confrontation towards China. You know, they want these are like the proxy states for a confrontation towards China. Philippines, Singapore, or some other states, they are trying to arm them. They are trying to support them in their confrontational politics. They're doing military trainings with them, and I think it's not a good path for the German politics.
Where do you think this is all heading, Sevim, in terms of the longer term consequences of both Germany's militarization, the EU, NATO's further militarization? Many who follow this program talk about the problems with overall trying to militarize to points that the Ukraine conflict has already shown are not even possible to reach, given that the state of even just the military industrial complex in Europe. But still, there are consequences to investing these kind of resources into a genocide in Gaza, into, of course, pouring everything into a Ukraine proxy war. And then, of course, this buildup with China, which seems to have very contradictory consequences, as you said before. Germany has been destroying itself economically by pulling away from Russia via sanctions, and China via a similar kind of trade war model. What's your impression of the long-term consequences for both Germany and Europe as it heads down this path further and further?
Well, as I said, I think the root of all bad policy today is the vassal relationship of the German government to the US. And it has consequences. It has consequences like in a record of 108 billion defense budget, so-called defense budget at the moment, and soon 225 billion. This is nearly the half of the federal budget. That's the 5% of the GDP, what Trump and the NATO demanded from Germany. The troops, for example, the US wants more soldiers, or Germany wants to reintroduce the draft, and also Trump wants Germany to fight Russia, so the US can focus on Latin America, for example, Venezuela, and China, and Germany jumps. And this shows us this vassal loyalty puts our country in mortal danger, and we will pay the price. Not Washington, not New York, not LA. So, and I think we have to get rid of this vassal relationship, because we have to push it back. I mean, the decline of the US and their refusal to accept a multipolar world are bringing increasing uncertainty to the world. And that's why we have to push it back, and we need strong movements for neutrality and peace, on Russia, for example, but also on China. And only when we recognize these realities of this multipolar world, we have a chance to survive and to stop the decline. Because my impression is that when you read about imperialism, for example, the empire is facing a decline at the moment, and there are two ways to cope with this decline. The first way is to cooperate with your competitors, to have a win-win situation, to coexist for a coexistence, to try to build a coexistence. And the second way is to be aggressive, try to stop this decline with every instrument you have, and this is the danger we are facing at the moment. And I know there is a new briefing by the Rand Corporation in the United States, who are trying to convince the U.S. administration to get over the phases of confrontational or war or whatever against China, and try to do a coexistence with China. And I think the summit of Trump and Xi Jinping was in a way good, but I don't think that it will last long. I think it's just a pause for 2 years' time to have again the confrontation US versus China. And I think for that, we need a lot of allies around the world, peace-loving people, freedom-loving people who are trying to build this strong movement for neutrality, for example, and for peace.
Yeah. I mean, it is right now a very concerning path that Germany in particular is taking, but really the entirety of Europe. In terms of overall, though, what would you say, would be the ideal relationship for Germany to have with, a neutrality, you said, with regard to Russia, China, with regard to how the NATO's posture toward NATO. But you even have, the former Finnish president saying that, even using talks as a kind of weapon. We've seen this with Trump using diplomacy as a weapon to further war. We saw that with Iran. We see that even in Gaza. How do you see the actual ideal relationship then that Germany could have and the rest of Europe could have with Russia and China? Should it get out underneath this vassal relationship that you've been speaking about?
Yeah, I mean, for that we need we need for sure a new government. Whatever we like to do regarding peace process with China and peace process with Russia and friendly relationships, but and for that, I think, as I said, the neutrality. I think we have to be a sovereign country first of all. We are not sovereign. I mean, we do not have this sovereignty. If we do, if we would be sovereign, we would look after our energy infrastructure like Nord Stream, and don't believe the bullshit about Ukrainian sailors, because we know from the reports from Seymour Hersh, that it was our big brother US that bombed our energy infrastructure. So we have to look after our own interests, and then try to get the European countries on this track too, because Europe cannot survive as a vassal of the United States and paying tribute for the empire, like the president of the European Commission did, Ursula von der Leyen, a German former defense minister. She was, and she signed the contract to the United States that we are doing in the next year's investments in the US in a worth of 450 billion euro. We are going to buy from the US American industrial complex weapons, and we are going to buy energy, the liquid energy, in an amount of 750 billion euros and so on. So we are giving everything what we have, or even don't have, to the US. And I think we need in Germany a shift in the politics, a shift towards more sovereignty, more neutrality, and therefore I think it's very important to get to pull back the US soldiers, for example. I mean, in the history, the French left, the British left, the Soviet Union soldiers, the Red Army soldiers, respectively, the Russian soldiers, they have left. The last ones in 1994, the Russian soldiers left German soil, but we still have about 40,000 US American soldiers. And during the shutdown of the US, for example, German taxpayers were paying them. And I think it's just remarkable. I think I'm very thankful what US has done in Second World War. I like the United States. There are plenty nice people like you in the United States I have met, but I think it's time to go home, to get the US soldiers on US soil again. And I think they can and should take their US nuclear bombs with them, because we have more than 20 US nuclear bombs on German soil. So I think it's time to demilitarize Germany. Also, if you want to have a sovereign country, you should do this: close the US military bases, get rid of the US nuclear bombs who are making us to a target.
Yeah, no, great points. Well, in terms of what you were saying, I was just thinking about this narrative that I've been seeing going around, and you addressed it a little earlier in the show about this idea that Europe is taking over. Now it's Europe's war against Russia. One of the things that's been so interesting watching is the reaction to the Trump administration almost rebranding how it is using Europe essentially for its own foreign policy objectives, saying that, oh, no, we're not giving anything to any particular war, especially Ukraine, but Europe is the one that is paying for weapons and then doing what they want with them, right? Paying the United States, paying for weapons, doing what they want them. And that constitutes somehow, the U.S. washing its hands. When I look at it from the outside, that's just reframing and rebranding the same relationship, which is Europe pays and gets what the U.S. wants it to receive, and then takes directives toward how it is used. What's your impression of this narrative?
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, they are. I mean, you have to remember under the Trump administration, there was initially a willingness, for example, to recognize that NATO's expansion eastwards and the attempt in 2008 to bring in Ukraine and Georgia has well crossed the red line, and this line was knowingly crossed. And they lived in this illusion that Russia could be ruined or at least challenged. So now, what I see is the Trump administration is increasingly swimming to the Biden course. They are swimming to the Biden course.
Right.
And
Yes.
as you said, the difference is the Europeans are now paying for the US weapons for Ukraine. We are paying, our German and European taxpayers. And the result is an increasing overstretch of NATO and the calculated decline of the European countries. And I think this is something we have to face, because also not only in the US, also in Europe and Germany, some people think the Trump is the peace president or whatever. He's not the peace president. He is playing a game, and the US foreign policy under Trump is again classic imperialist policy without frills and human rights nonsense. It is about plundering resources and geopolitical spheres of influence. And one sees this in Latin America, in Venezuela, but also you can see it against Nigeria. I mean, the threats against Nigeria, and the African states are not safe from the hunger of the U.S. Administration. And so someone once said Marco Rubio is like John Bolton without a mustache. And I think it's true. The neocons are back and only worse. And these neocons are trying to put Germany and Europe in the front line against Russia, and in economically in the front line against China as well.
Yeah, well, Sevim, it was a great conversation with you today. I really appreciate you taking the time out. I have your book as well as your website in the video description. If there's anything else that I might be missing, please let the audience know. We have plenty more show to go as well, people, so stick around. But Sevim, I'll leave you to conclude.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thanks. Thank you.
All right, Sevim. Thanks so much. I will be in touch with you. It was great. It was an honor.
Thank you so
Honor
much.
to share the platform.
I hope it
Take
was
care.
okay, and my English
Yeah.
was not that worse, not that bad. So
No,
thanks
it was
having
great.
me. Thanks
It
having
was
me
great.
on
Of
the
course.
show, Danny.
Of course. All right. I'll be in touch. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. We have plenty more show to go, and we have ongoing friend of the show, Patrick Henningsen, who I'm going to bring on in just a minute. Everyone hit that like button. Post Veterans Day, we're looking at a little bit of a smaller crowd, but still the best crowd, because we have the best audience here paying attention to the developments that matter most in this world. Without further ado, everyone, though, do hit that like button. We have a lot to get to. We're going to do a bit of a pivot to West Asia as we get started here. Yeah, so let's do this. I know I see Patrick getting ready here. I don't know, Patrick, you can give me a thumbs up when you are ready to go. But all right, everybody. Stick around. What is going on today anyway? It's been quite something. You know, when I was looking at our opening story today, I was looking at the foiled plot that Russia was able to uncover and expose. I think we have Patrick on right now. Patrick, are you there with us? Hey, can you hear us?
Okay.
All right, Patrick, you are on. I can take you off for a second if you're still getting ready. Okay, I think Patrick is still getting ready. Also, everyone, announcement after the program today at 3:30 p.m. Eastern times, I will be on Mother of All talk shows. Okay, so be sure to come on and watch that. George Galloway. I will be talking about the latest geopolitical developments at 3:30 p.m. Eastern time. But without further ado, I want to put on Patrick. You ready? Good. All right. Hey, Patrick.
Yeah, sorry
Sorry.
about that.
How are you? No, it's
Yes.
okay. It's okay. I understood. We've been having some connection issues over StreamYard, so hopefully everything goes smoothly. How are you doing?
Yeah, pretty good, Danny. Pretty good. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing pretty good myself. Good to have you back on. How about we get into some West Asia stuff? I wanted to, especially this Netanyahu mess. Let me just pull up some sources here because, as you probably been paying attention, there's been corruption trial or corruption hearings, I should say. I don't know how much Netanyahu is actually on trial. And of course, also Jolani, the so-called appointed president of Syria, non-elected president of Syria, was in the White House. But first, I want to play the overall sentiments, the atmosphere that Netanyahu is kind of mired in this corruption trial. And here is just one example of what's been going around in terms of what's happening in the settler colonial Knesset. Here is what's going on. Let me mute this so I can read it. So it says, you personally initiate Qatar's money transfer to Hamas together with Mohammed Al-Ahmadi. You bear responsibility for it. That was your personal order. In 2020, you sent Mossad chief Yossi Cohen. And then he goes on to say, along with Herzi Halavi to Qatar, in order to increase the amount of money there. Why are you against the governmental commission? Because you know that all the meetings are recorded in minutes, word for word. And there you have Netanyahu's face, of intransigence. But also there was a letter that Donald Trump sent. I don't know if you saw this, Patrick. Donald Trump sent a letter to President Herzog, and I'll pull that up as you're speaking, saying that Netanyahu should be pardoned of all of his crimes. And that has also caused a big storm inside of the Knesset about Israel's so-called independence. What do you make of this situation vis-a-vis Netanyahu, as we are still in this, I guess you could call it ceasefire, quote unquote, period in Gaza, which is anything but?
Yeah, it's what can I say? This is just another chapter in this long-running saga. What I'll say about Netanyahu, he's got an incredible survival instinct, and he's gotten this far. And if you think about the total destruction of what's happened, what he's done to Israel's image internationally, their legitimacy internationally, and how that issue has fractured. First, the Democratic Party for the 2024 election, they suffered massively because of the Biden administration's support. Genocide Joe, that was the rallying cry. So that helped to elect Donald Trump. And of course, now Trump is suffering with the split, the fissure within the MAGA movement. And this is one of the key issues. Obviously, it's tied to the Epstein situation as well. But Trump going around canvassing, other governments and hanging out in other parliaments, calling for, exoneration or pardon for somebody who's been embroiled in a corruption scandal for like years now. It's just unbelievable, like zero self-awareness from Trump. But I think this kind of shows he feels like he is at the peak of his powers. But I think it's just the opposite is true. I think Trump is right now probably heading into a ravine that is going to be inescapable because he's losing his own base. So that's kind of it. It's going to be open season on Trump, but not in the lawfare way, not in the TDS Trump derangement way. But there are like grounds for legitimate impeachment right now. Okay, just on the tariffs alone, it's totally unconstitutional. and he's basically trying to micromanage the U.S. economy. You know, $25 trillion a year economy. He's micromanaging it from the Oval Office. Where does he have the remit to do that, according to the U.S. Constitution? So Congress has ultimately power of the purse. So, but Trump's using it in a punitive way by attacking all these different countries, and he's making these wild claims that, oh, we're going to make this amount of money or that amount of money, like that means anything. You know, he says, oh no, this is going to be fine. That's the Supreme Court argument. It's going to be fine because we're going to make a lot of money. Says who? Look at overall GDP figures. Wait till those numbers come out. You're probably going to see a contraction in the economy. Wall Street's doing great, but that doesn't mean the economy's doing great. It means Wall Street's doing great. It means his cronies, the types of people he hangs out with, the sort of people that game markets, that run crypto scams and stablecoin scams, these types of people are doing really well. Okay, he believes that's his new base. Trump's new base is the elite financial class. So forget about the Rust Belt. Forget about the Blue Dog Reagan Democrats in Ohio and Michigan and Wisconsin. Forget about them. They're done. He got his election. So now he's basically going to cast them off in the same way the Democrats jettisoned the working class. That was the death knell of Hillary Clinton's failed presidential campaign, and ultimately the Democratic Party as a whole. He's going to do the same thing. He's in the process of doing the same thing. So the whole, it's so gaudy, the relationship with Israel, the slavish kind of worshiping of this, his sugar mama, Miriam Adelson. It's just so disgusting. And if we're staying in West Asia, Danny, then the photo, I don't know if you've got the photo of Trump in the Oval Office.
I have more than a photo, but keep going.
with Jelani, doing Donald Trump doing that fake smile that he does for the cameras. You notice Trump looks a certain way, but whenever there's a still photo, he does that cheesy fake smile, and that's his look. That's his Zoolander sort of photo look. And he's sitting there with the founder of Al-Qaeda in Syria, the deputy of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi of ISIS, in our White House, in our White House. He thinks it's his White House, and he's going to allow a terrorist to hold court. And he's saying, "Oh, he's had a rough past. We've all had a rough past." What kind of rough past has Donald Trump had? I mean, how many millions of dollars did his dad give him to kickstart his real estate empire? Okay, Donald Trump did not have a rough past. Okay, maybe his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein is going to end up being his rough past, but according to recent emails leaked. But it's just unbelievable that he would say that that's a prerequisite for success, that you have to have a rough past. Like there's people struggling across America who have had rough pasts, who have been dealt a bad hand. And Donald Trump saying that he's somehow legitimizing a life of head chopping as a sort of sworn enemy of the United States in the global war on terror. And he's saying that's a rough past. It's I don't know. It's just a lack of self-awareness and just a completely stupid worldview, just devoid of any kind of detail as to the real reality of the situation. But what it does is shows you what a fraud the entire war on terror was. Okay. And what's funny about this as well, this might be a controversial statement on my part, but I'll say it. There's a bit of a reverse double psyop going on. Even the people that oppose this are saying, oh, this is Al-Qaeda who did 9/11. So they're sort of falling into this psyop that 9/11 was micromanaged by Osama bin Laden in a cave in Tora Bora, and these 17 Arab hijackers, 7 of which were alive afterwards, magically, somehow masterminded 9/11. Okay, fine. If you believe that, great. But the reality is, the more we're looking at this, the fact that Israel has no problem with an ISIS leader running their neighboring country of Syria tells you a lot about who were the driving force behind the entire dirty war in Syria from when it sort of kicked off in 2011 till the fall of the Assad government a year ago in Damascus. This was all for Israel. That's why you don't see any objection from the Israeli lobby, from IPAC, from any of these brain cells on J Street, or any of these think tanks or the Heritage or nothing. They're sitting there lauding this guy, this bearded head chopper in our White House, sitting next to the vice president, okay, and next to Tom Barak, who's this other chancer that Trump has brought in. And Donald Trump is sitting there allowing these a head chopper that has slaughtered Christians, Yazidis, Alawites, Shmailis, who's running pogroms in Syria since Donald Trump became president, and he's got him in a suit, sitting in our White House. I mean, this is the ritual humiliation of the United States of America by basically presiding with Donald Trump presiding over it. The optics of this are so bad. It's worse than Zelensky.
So bad.
It's worse than Zelensky.
Yes.
Zelensky's nothing compared to this. Although Jolani has a leg up on Zelensky, at least he wore a freaking tie and a real jacket. I hate to give him any kudos.
Right.
But it's a joke. Donald Trump is a joke of a president at this point. It's not serious. And what he's doing to the economy, to the U.S. foreign policy, to, I think, the reputation of the office of the presidency, this is the lowest point for the United States. This is lower than Bush, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Bush, for all his faults, and he had many, the Iraq War, I'm not minimizing that at all, but at least he had some basic decorum. Trump doesn't have it. And it's kind of disgusting at this point. I don't know. There's nothing nice or friendly that you can say to gloss this over, Danny. It's so bad.
Well, who's it benefiting? Who's it benefiting? I think we're seeing a major crash out because now, just less than a year into the administration, more and more people who supported the guy, which I didn't advise, but there were a number of people who did. Now they're coming to realize, because Donald Trump is just telling them and then doing the exact opposite of what they wanted him to do. And let's just go over this crash out in this particular part of the world, because it's very important to everything that you just noted. Let's just watch first, amid the pardon scandal, Trump trying to pardon Netanyahu. The Knesset, which is no friend of Palestinians or of Gaza, there are people incredibly furious, and it's going viral because this is the mood across the United States, the West, and the world. Nobody is a fan of Netanyahu. Everyone is trying to find somebody to blame, and you have Donald Trump essentially kissing Netanyahu's ring and doing everything he can to maintain his power, even though there are major forces inside of Israel who simply want to get rid of the face of Netanyahu as the leader of their greater Israel project. But it gets worse than this. You said there is the picture. Well, I have a video. Here's Donald Trump romantically, very romantically, welcoming Jolani, the head chopper, the Al-Qaeda leader, former Al-Qaeda leader, I guess we could say. But once you are, maybe it's one of those things that once one, you always are one. Here is that scene. Oh, sorry about that. Hold on. This always happens.
Yeah. This is it. No. It's the best fragrance. Come here, man. I have more here, sir.
So anyway, I'll turn the music off because there might be some copyright issues there later. But there you see Donald Trump giving Jolani some cologne or perfume or whatever it is. But that was the scene. That was the mood. It was complete and utter reverence for someone who was not elected and who has literally cut off heads in their terrorist activities. supported by the U.S., supported by Israel, supported by the worst forces in that region. And then I want to play this as well, Patrick. This is Jolani on Fox News being questioned about 9/11, and it was just, I mean, it was just absolutely, it was horrid. It was horrid because he did not seem even remorseful, and this is the guy that they are propping up. Here we go.
You, Mr. President.
Sorry again. Sorry about this, everyone. StreamYard is not the best platform. Here we go.
Have regret. President have regrets that Al-Qaeda carried out those attacks that killed 3,000 Americans.
I was only 19 years old, so I was a very young person, and it didn't have any decision-making power at that time, and I don't have anything to do with it. And Al-Qaeda was not present right then in my area. So you're speaking to the wrong person about this subject. We mourn for every civilian that got killed, and we know that people suffer from the war, especially civilians who paid a price, a hefty price for the war.
Mr. President, the White House has said that President Trump would like Syria to join the Abraham.
So, of course, they're going to talk about the Abraham Accords. There's no more details than that. But, Patrick, there was not much remorse there. This is the person that the U.S. has supported under Trump to lead Syria. So your reaction to all of this?
The question that the Fox News host stroke spokesmodel should have asked is, do you support, or did you at the time support the 9/11 attacks in principle? That would be the question to ask. Okay, obviously, if it was a real journalist, it's not, it's a spokesmodel. But so that was just a puff sort of interview. I mean, it's kind of a ritual humiliation for Fox. So it's a humiliation for the office of the president, for the country of the United States, for Fox News itself, which is meant to be a neocon platform that opposes terror, the global war on terror. You know, they did that for 25 years, and they're platforming this guy. And to me, this is like Israel's way of really sticking it to the United States, saying, this is our guy, and you're going to be a gracious host to our guy, and we're going to humiliate you. And that's what Trump has done here. I mean, they had to sneak him in the back door, I heard. He didn't come through the front entrance of the White House. It's a very interesting detail there. But it's too much at this point. I mean, this guy is a criminal. He's not elected as president. He's not democratic. He hasn't done anything positive for Syria. He's just slaughtered a whole lot of people and balkanized the country. And he certainly hasn't said a word about the United States occupying a good chunk of Syria and the other foreign countries that are decamped there. No problem at all. So he has no belief of Syrian sovereignty. He hasn't said anything about getting rid of the Israelis out of the Golan Heights, occupying Mount Hermon. No problem with that. Or the fact that Israel liquidated Syria's military in the first 72 hours of this thug and his merry band of head choppers from Idlib taking over the capital in their Toyota fleet. Okay, nothing to say about any of that. So it's kind of a joke. I don't think he's going to, I'd be surprised how long Jolani lasts, because his usefulness basically is finished for Israel and for the West. They got what they want. They've got strategic control of territory. They're breaking up Syria. Okay, so it's nothing positive for Syria that will come out of this. You're talking about lifting sanctions. Do you know how corrupt it is in Syria? This guy and his thugs are seizing businesses, okay, and saying that they were ill-gotten gains, property, businesses, because the person is the wrong ethnicity, from the wrong sect, or they were supposedly pro-regime. Therefore, any money they made or business they acquired or property is, quote, ill-gotten according to their new Sharia, extremist Salafist interpretation of laws and morals. They just take it. They're just seizing it and handing it out to their cronies, and also allowing foreign jihadi fighters from, Uzbekistan and Uyghurstan and all these other Central Asian far-flung destinations, allowing them to collect on the booty some kind of entitlement, like this is the Crusades. but just the radical Salafist crusade version of this. And so Trump supports all this. There's nothing. He says doing a really good job in Syria. It's a nightmare. I mean, what planet are these people on in the Trump administration? And then they say, this is the part I love. They say, oh, well, Syria's had a closed economy under the Assad regime, and this is why they're in debt, and so it's so poorly run, and it's bad, a terrible economy for everybody. That's because they were under the worst sanctions by the United States and the European Union. They got double teamed for going on 15 years. Okay, so of course the economy is going to be in shambles. Of course they're going to have hyperinflation of the Syrian pound. Of course there's going to be embargoes on everything you can possibly imagine, including agricultural equipment. Okay, then they get hit with a drought, and then the U.S. and U.S. intelligence, Israeli intelligence, backed the Arab Spring, paid for by Qatar, paid for by other Gulf countries. All these radical fighters trafficking billions in weapons in there to basically destabilize the country in the United States of America that Donald Trump represents, armed, trained, and funded all of these terrorists in Syria, and did so for a very long time, and are probably still doing it today, quite frankly. Okay, and so he has the gumption to stand up there and recognize this terrorist as if he is some legitimate head of state, when all he is a U.S. and Israeli puppet that is running pogroms as we speak in Syria. It's so far beyond the pale. I mean, history is going to look back as, Trump has some real dunce moments, but this isn't just stupid. This is kind of very malicious, very mendacious. He's recognizing the barbarity of these type of people that were allowed to basically trash the country of Syria for so long. And like he recognizes the barbarity and supports the barbarity of not just Jolani, but the Netanyahu regime. And look at what they've done in Gaza. So you have ISIL and you have JSIL. You have the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, and then you have the Jewish state of Iraq and the Levant. Basically the same thing. A conquest, basically. Yeah. So it's Trump saying this is our values here. Sit next to me, Mr. Terrorist, ISIS head, Al-Qaeda founder in Syria. You sit next to me. I'm going to recognize you, and we're going to throw some money at you. We're going to send the IMF to make sure that you're properly bankrupt for the next 20 years. And they say, it's going to be $200 billion to rebuild Syria. $200 billion. What's that? It's not aid. It's DFI coming from the Gulf or Jared Kushner's fund or whatever. Okay. They want to basically privatize everything, take it, asset strip it for every possible thing you can imagine, suck as much profit out of that as possible, and the people are going to be poorer than ever. And what are you going to have? A migrant flow, another wave of migrants into Europe from Syria, and you can then send money to Tommy Robinson and the far right to scream, "Oh, here come the Muslims! Oh, more Muslims, more Syrians! We don't need this." It's ruining the white character of Europe. Right. But they support Trump and Israel, who are basically masterminding the destabilization, the complete collapse of the economies in these countries. I mean, if Elon Musk was a rocket scientist, he wouldn't need to be to figure this out. This is basic math. But you're dealing with a level of idiocy right now in the political class that to me is it's breathtaking. It really is. And the media somehow can't do basic arithmetic on any of this. And even the alternative media much of them are clueless as to what they're actually watching here. It's pretty unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. It's unbelievable to see, on the one hand, Trump begging for Netanyahu to be pardoned in something that almost reveals, and he's done this a few times with demanding a pardon of Netanyahu. He recently said that not only the bombing of Iran during the end of the 12-day war, but he recently told the media that the U.S. had a huge hand in the initial attack on Iran, which, of course, for the longest time, he was saying the United States had nothing to do with that. But now we're seeing, I think, all of the masks come off. We have, on the one hand, the United States pushing for its own agenda with Israel, vis-a-vis Israel, continue to support a government, a colony that is wildly unpopular in the United States, even among, as you said earlier, a big section now of those who supported him. Some of them have massive pockets and have massive influence, like a Candace Owens. And then on the other side, supporting and not just supporting, but as you said, groveling over al-Jolani and not only bringing him to the White House, but making a very concerted statement that this is the future of U.S. Policy in West Asia, going so far as to talk about a military installation or military installations in Syria, which contradicts everything that Trump has said essentially for the last how many years? Decade, right? Like, this was his platform, was getting the U.S. out of Syria. Now he wants the U.S. back in Syria. Your thoughts?
I remember when he was during his first term, and he said, I mean, he sort of, it's the U.S. put stakes down in Syria as Trump was coming into office. So 2017, and Trump inherited all of the Obama nation building crew, basically. And I think the first there were a few very likely characters in that, Brett McGurk being one of them. And Trump just grandfathered that whole project in. And then, 2 years into his term, raises this thing, like, I guess there was Bannon or probably somebody that still had a modicum of some ethical or moral compass, said, we need to pull our troops out of Syria. And as soon as he announced that, the neocons basically lost their rag, led by Lindsey Graham, and sort of having fits, and, the hands were waving. And basically they talked him out. And probably the Israeli lobby had some stern words to Trump, and they talked him out of that. And so the idea that the U.S. should build a permanent base, you're talking about, a multi-billion-dollar major military complex near Damascus. And plus he's talking about a base in Gaza, a major military facility in Gaza. So you're right, Danny, this is going in the opposite direction of what he campaigned for, but everything he's doing is in the opposite direction of what he campaigned for. So it leads us to believe that Trump is a fraud politically. He lied, or he had no intention, or he didn't know what was involved in making any of those promises real. He just doesn't have a concept of how to follow through with all of these great, dramatic and profound statements and promises about ending this war, bringing the troops home, doing that, the other, bringing jobs back to America. There's no new jobs being created in this economy. But just on the foreign policy front, there's nothing there that even resembles any of the things that got him elected. So of course his base is going to feel betrayed. They're going to realize that Donald Trump is just another charlatan, like every other corrupt charlatan, like every other politician that they all eschewed. And that's why they got behind Trump, because they really believed that he was going to be different, that he wasn't a swamp creature, that he's come from outside the swamp to drain it. But this is what happens. The swamp is a powerful ecosystem, and the swamp turns you into a swamp creature, whether you like it or not. And so Trump, he surrounded himself by some incredible grifters and charlatans and sort of borderline. And by the time this all fleshes out, you're talking about a whole bunch of criminal proceedings, actual crime, actual corruption, not the fake Trump derangement lawfare that preceded him, coming in his first term, and then during Biden's term in office. Actual corruption, actual graft, actual crimes, actual grounds for impeachment. on multiple fronts, totally trashing the U.S. Constitution, which for a Republican who masquerades as a conservative, or MAGA, which masquerades as a conservative movement, to be anti-constitutional, especially on the First Amendment, all to protect a genocide in Israel and to make Miriam Adelson happy and the Israeli lobby, that you're going to trash the U.S. Constitution, which you swore an oath. I know he didn't put his hand on the book this time. You notice that? Donald Trump didn't put his hand on the book, and he's trashed the U.S. Constitution. So, and all of his supporters in his inner circle are happy with this. They're all happy with it. Only a few people have broken ranks, but they're so enamored with the power that they really don't have any principles. So that's it for conservatism. Forget it. You've got rhinos and you've got neocon fascists now. Nothing in between. You've got Thomas Massey, Daniel McAdams, Ron Paul. I can count them on one hand, basically. There's nobody. There's nobody. So it's really dark. And it just shows you Israel is like an anvil that's chained to the presidency, and they've just chucked it over the edge of the boat. And there's no, I mean, there's no bottom for this. As long as you're tethering yourself to this country in the Middle East and you're arranging all of the U.S. assets, U.S. going further into debt, and its whole military footprint in the Middle East, everything, every naval asset, every air asset, every ground asset is to provide security for the state of Israel. It's not to protect the oil or anything else or trade routes. It's to defend Israel and Israeli interests. That's the entire U.S. defense array in the Middle East and Central Asia, all of it. They say, no, it's to contain China. Maybe you can make that argument in Afghanistan, towards Pakistan, and of course, East Asia. Okay, we can make that argument. And maybe you can make that argument with AFRICOM and the sacking of Libya and the partitioning of Sudan had a huge damage to Chinese interests. Okay, maybe you can make that argument. But the overwhelming, obvious situation is all of this is for Israel. If you look at the power they have in directing U.S. foreign policy and U.S. money and where we spend our money around this region, they have total power over Congress, Senate, and the presidency, and the media as well. There's no debate of whether that's the case or not. If you want to look at the seed framework for that from the Clean Break document, or Rebuilding America's Defenses, or the Project from a New American Century, or Netanyahu's own books that he wrote and is canvassing around Washington for 20 years. Okay, it's pretty clear who's the dominant driver of U.S. policy in the region. Okay, this is from mid 1990s, or let's say early 90s till the present. So, I mean, I'm talking about the petrodollar anymore. It's long after. So that's the reality of it. And people got to wake up and smell the coffee and realize what this is all for. It's not really for American interests, not economically, and certainly not politically, and certainly not for its international reputation, and certainly not for its global trade empire. Just the opposite, in fact. And this president is presiding over the controlled demolition of the U.S. economy and their reputation globally. Donald Trump, lay it all at his feet. He's done more in 1 year than some presidents managed to screw up in 2 terms. He is incredible. I can't imagine what the next 3 years are going to have in store for us with this guy. And the clowns that he has surrounded himself with. It's embarrassing. It really is. I mean, it's even worse that the Democrats are paralytic and they can't really do anything about it because half of them support this anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's what I definitely see. Part of this seems to be also a game that often is played in U.S. politics, which is at any given moment push crisis to the limit so that there can be this change of hand, which is almost 150% guaranteed in Congress. Generally, it's the other side. It's flipped. Generally, it's the Democrats that really like to relinquish any kind of majorities if they have the White House, if they have both chambers of Congress. They like to, concede that within 2 years, in that 2 years, so that they can have this narrative of, well, oh, we're being gridlocked, that nothing can be done, as a lot of things are getting done. Just they all happen to be against the interests of people. But I see that kind of happening now, Patrick, and it's becoming more and more apparent as people like Tucker Carlson, as people like Candace Owens, they become more and more vocal, especially about the Israel policy. I mean, you mentioned this base that the U.S. military is considering a base for 10,000 people, quote unquote, near Gaza. Now they're saying there's going to be no U.S. troops, which to me is absolutely unfathomable, that there will be a U.S. base with 0 U.S. troops in it. But it's supposed to be near Gaza. I believe it's supposed to be kind of adjacent to the Negev desert. And it's seeking a cost estimate for this so it can support 10,000 personnel, 10,000 square feet of office space for 12 months. And of course, we should just keep this all with a grain of salt. But it just keeps on going and going on. I'll play this video about, especially his policy with regard to the economy as it relates to Israel. I mean, everything is just kind of blowing up. This was his reaction to a question about the whole visa situation. He made a huge crisis out of visas being given relating to both immigration and the economy. And now that he's asked about it, he essentially insults the entire United States here. Here we go.
Raise wages for American.
Again, sorry, hold on one second. I gotta remove that. And then here we go.
You can't flood the country with tens of.
Here we go.
Want to raise wages for American workers, you can't flood the country with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of foreign workers.
You also do have to bring in talent. When
we have plenty of talented people here.
No, you don't.
We don't have talented people here?
No, you don't have certain talents, and people have to learn. You can't take people off an unemployment line and say, I'm going to put you into a factory where we're going to make missiles.
So this was astounding,
Missiles.
not because of the whole immigration debate even, but just how he blatantly insults the entirety of essentially the U.S. population, or at least working population or potential working population, mentions unemployment lines, which is a very sensitive subject because that's going on. And then, talks about how the example would be to take them off of the street and for them to make missiles. I mean, this whole narrative is just an encapsulation, I think, where we are, plus talking about, after all of these promises of no more U.S. troops into West Asia, into the Middle East, now in the most unpopular, the biggest blemish, the biggest eyesore for the U.S.'s reputation was the genocide in Gaza. Now essentially being an occupant or looking to occupant 10,000 square feet is not a small space. Your reaction to all of this?
Yeah, I mean, it's to what it's going to become. And it's floating out this idea. You see this a lot, of course, with this president. They drift stuff out on Monday. See what the reaction is by Wednesday, and then they'll recalibrate for the following Monday, just to see. And it's also interesting to see if there's any media pushback from this, or any MAGA pushback from it. And I think that this president is just so adept, and this administration, at managing the news cycle by what Steve Bannon called famously flooding the zone. We're going to flood the zone. They really good at flooding the zone. But I think it is a real insult to say that Americans don't have the talent. What he's talking about as a businessman, as a financier, is cheap labor. That's what he means. It's not that America doesn't have the talent, but it doesn't have the talent that'll work for 30% less. And this is when, if you remember, when the whole H-1B visa debate was going crazy, a year ago, or I can't remember if that was the beginning of the Trump term or just before inauguration, might have been between during the transition. But Elon Musk had a public meltdown on X over this issue because hardcore MAGA didn't want to give any ground on H-1B. And remember, it was about Vivek Ramaswamy was also in this debate, him being of Indian origin, and the whole tech bro sector and the heads of these tech companies and so forth, all from India, Google, etc. And so Elon Musk had a public meltdown. He went crazy because the H-1B visa and Indian, high-skilled Indian labor that will work for less is a core tenet of Elon Musk's success of some of his businesses, as the rest of Silicon Valley as well. So they love this. They love the fact that they can get the high-skilled workers, highly motivated, that'll work for 30% less. It's a business thing. And instead of being honest about this and just being kind of forthright that that's really what their interest is, they have to dance around the issue in such a disingenuous way, and then insult the American workforce. I mean, for Trump to do that, it just shows you what a fraud MAGA is, and it's just a slogan. It's just a hat, you know. I mean, it was entertaining, and a lot of people, I think, on the conservative side went along with it because we have a democracy where we get to vote. So if somebody is campaigning with a platform that's markedly different, like as a change agent to the previous status quo, you're gonna punt. You're gonna give it a go. If it works, great. If it's a little bit better than before, great. If he stopped all the wars, fantastic. But if you're not getting any of these things, and it's not making America great, and it's not even patriotic, and literally Donald Trump holds the American workforce in contempt, then it's at that point, if you have any self-respect on the right, that includes all you grifters and the types of people that festoon around One America News, Fox News, Newsmax, okay? Yeah. And you think that somehow this president is somehow representing the working class? Are you freaking serious? At this point, you know, you might as well smoke that joint live on air, like on the Rogan show or whatever, because you're high at that point. I mean, seriously, guys, the grift is unbelievable at this point. I mean, you're seeing the real Donald Trump is what you're seeing. The mask is off, feels confident. He's got the power. His inner circle are going around bullying and intimidating people, threatening people, abusing the executive power. Marco Rubio's running around like literally a hatchet man for Israel, you know, chasing students around campuses to deport them because they're criticizing a foreign country. I mean, that's the state of the Trump administration. It's a joke. It's a clown show. This is clown world. Okay, it's as clownish as the Biden administration, but it's a lot more dangerous at this point because Donald Trump has basically taken control of U.S. economic policy from his office. And if you get it wrong, and you look at these interviews from Scott Bassett and all these other people, they don't know what they're doing. It really comes off as desperate, and it's like they're stabbing in the dark. And they're doubling down on all of these other previous bad decisions. And just look at the numbers. You know, it's contracting. Confidence is not high. Okay, they're pumping and dumping stocks and crypto, fine, but most Americans don't benefit from that. Okay, but the super class is getting rich like you wouldn't believe right now. They're making tons of money. So that wealth gap is increasing. And that's what Donald Trump is delivering. And if it's bad after 12 months of his first term, imagine what's going to happen in the next 3 years. And then what? Oh, you're going to blame it on Antifa when there's street riots and people are burning, you know, there's dumpster fires across American cities because people can't afford to, you know, have to rent and feed themselves. What are you going to do? Blame that on Antifa? No, the radical left. It's not my problem. Biden did it. I'm trying to fix it. You know, they won't give me a chance. I mean, it's endless with this guy. And the wars. How many new wars? We got a war against Venezuela. He's talking about a war against Colombia. Let me think. Did I leave anything out? Is Nigeria? Let's start a war there. Where else can we start a new war? Why don't we kick it off in Iraq against the Hashd al-Shabi? That looks like a goer. Another one with Iran. That'd be nice before Christmas, or maybe we'll wait till the spring. We'll see. Quite frankly, I don't know. Maybe the weather will be better in the spring.
Yeah.
I mean, with Trump, this is endless. And then what? China is just waiting there on the sidelines. When are we going to ramp that war up? You know, the Chinese. I mean, the amount of damage that can be done in 3 years with this crazed, tattoo-laden Fox News weekend host as the head of the Pentagon, and this insane president surrounded by all of these chancers. What could be done in 3 years is frightening. And there has to be a viable opposition, either in politics or the media, somehow to restrain what this train wreck that we are witnessing right now. This is a train wreck. I'm not being hyperbolic. Okay. Declaring war on half of South America over nothing other than provide a convenient distraction and maybe thinking that you're going to steal the resources of Venezuela. See how that is. Let try it and let's see what happens. You think you can pull that one off? Let's see how the rest of the continent reacts. What are you gonna invade Brazil next? If Brazil reacts or takes Venezuela's side. I mean, it's amazing. The Trump administration has advanced solidarity in South America in ways that previous presidents could never have imagined. So Donald Trump has that effect, maybe not the intended effect that he wanted.
Yeah. Yeah, it certainly is a train wreck. I mean, that is not hyperbole. And it's across all realms. You mentioned the economic policy, the backlash already from a so-called $2,000 dividend, quote unquote, for these tariffs. That's not being taken up well by the vast majority of the U.S. population because of the fact that we've gone through over a year plus the Biden years, since COVID, really.
Trump first. Trump won, and then Biden. Trump dumped an incredible amount of money on the Federal Reserve balance sheet, and so did Biden. Just basically continued that. So Trump has never owned up for the economic catastrophe that he himself triggered in his term in 2020. That's created inflationary cycles that the economy has not recovered from. I remember being I landed after, was it 2022, and a tuna sandwich and a bag of Lay's Frito chips or whatever, and a Coke was like $19 for a tuna sandwich. Are you kidding me? Just 5 years before, you could probably get away with a tuna sandwich for under $10, and it doubled. That's the cost of food. Listen, the cost of food in America is incredible. Criminal. It's criminal. But this is because of the economic policy of this president in his first term and the kind of brain dead Biden administration. And Trump has done nothing to address this other than promise we're going to bring manufacturing jobs home. This is the Gilded Age of America. No, it's the Gelded Age, not the Gilded Age. It is the Gelded Age of America in terms of conservatism, which is supposed to be better for macroeconomics than the radical socialist left, but they're spending more money. Remember what happened to Doge? Remember Doge? Elon was going to fix it, streamline it all, cut the waste, bring the deficit down. I wonder how the deficit is going to look after the first calendar year of this administration. That's going to be very interesting, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Well, I hope people are well aware that the what you've just described, Patrick, in terms of the time and in terms of the timing of all of it, we have now, I think, a very concerted effort by the Trump administration to actually punt on the so-called congressional elections. Like, I think a lot of this policy is actually to accelerate their own decline so that they can gain some legitimacy, leading toward a kind of blame game situation. Because now Trump is saying the Democrats, it doesn't really work. But if Trump can say the Democrats when they lose the majorities, then it'll work. But what happens to lose those majorities means everything has to get that much more worse. And I think that's what people should be expecting. And we have to remember that around this time period, going into a midterm election period, is generally when the U.S. revs up in terms of foreign policy. We saw it February 2022. What happened? The Ukraine conflict under Trump, Obama. We saw many iterations of a similar thing, where there would be aggression, increased aggression. Someone was being targeted. It was Venezuela under Trump, or under Obama, the actual interventions in Syria, Libya, etc. Those were all in the lead up to midterm elections. So people should expect exactly what you're saying, which is this is not going to retreat. There's no retreat from here. It's going to be this same old kind of manufactured crisis. A lot of these are crises manufactured for both political and economic gain, and there's going to be major crises ahead. And so, Patrick, we have a few minutes left here. What's your where are you seeing this kind of rolling crisis headed? Because we see a lot of buildup. And I think one of the scariest things people should take note of is that the U.S. is actually on a kind of back foot because of its overall declining position worldwide and its own economic woes, which see a shrinking overall world economic standing in the world, as well as you mentioned, the contracting GDP issue. Your assessment, your thoughts.
Well, I just want to say it's not all gloom and doom, Danny. I bring good news and good tidings as well, because if you the last 12 months, there haven't been any mass shootings. I mean, do the mass shooters take a holiday when there's a Republican president, or with this government? Who knows? Or maybe because they shifted the FBI management out. Where are all the mass shootings? They used to be under Obama, literally a daily, a weekly occurrence. But the Republicans or the neocons tend to favor domestic Al-Qaeda attacks, but we haven't seen any of those as well. So have all these people taken the holiday? All the terrorists and mass shooters have taken a holiday. So I think this is great. A little bit of a breath of fresh air. But both Republicans and Democrats have a bad habit in America, is after they win, especially if they sweep, the White House, the Congress, and the Senate, they tend to enjoy the spoils of victory, at least for the first year or two. Many go on holiday, and many just don't really care. They're just so happy to be in power. The hunger's not there. That's part of the flip. But I do take on board what you're saying there. But it is interesting how some of these other convenient distractions have gone away and disappeared. But there's other. But I think you might see genuine domestic unrest if the economic situation continues to go in the dire direction that it is, and that this president is not delivering on any of these lofty promises that he wrote in last January on. So that's globally. Globally, the United States has succeeded in alienating a lot of its, I would say, semi-allies. They've alienated a lot. They've pushed them into consolidation of other networks of countries like BRICS, etc. Shanghai Cooperation, Asia. People looking for areas to get out of the dollar. All of this has been accelerated by Trump. And the way that they weaponize tariffs with this White House is kind of quite baffling, that anybody thinks that somehow this is going to be netting any positive result. because what he's done is he's destroyed trust in relationships between the United States, maybe forever, and all these other countries, basically most of the global economy. So, the whole idea, and this was a great trope when people say, oh, the globalists, Alex Jones and everybody else, even MAGA, the globalists, but they're so sort of simple-minded to not be able to distinguish between globalization and globalism. They're two different things. And the globalization in terms of world trade and interdependency and the WTO and all of these sort of multilateral organizations, okay, this delivered one of the greatest periods of prosperity in human history, planetarily speaking, okay? And so globalization also built up the superclass in America. So Trump comes in, is wanting to balkanize the global economy, declare economic warfare on everybody, including his allies, punish people for, I don't know, maybe not showing enough respect to the Trump administration, or he's meddling in the judiciary of other countries, meddling in elections. Look at what the Trump administration did with Argentina, basically threatened to withhold $20 billion subsequent bailout of the Argentinian currency if Javier, whatever his name is, Milei, if his party didn't win the midterms. So Trump's injecting fear into a foreign country during an election cycle, and using this as kind of like economic blackmail, if you will. This is a level of interference and meddling never seen before, but done very overtly. And a lot of people should really take pause and realize what they're watching here. It's done in a ham-fisted way. Yes, it's reckless. He'll argue that it's effective because he got the election result that he wanted. But there's so much of this. It's just constant. What I think it's doing is I think it's a net negative for America, because Russia led the way on this. When Lavrov said years ago that the United States is no longer agreement capable. And what he's saying there is, and that goes for the Biden administration as well as the Trump. So these foreign countries might say in the previous more stable political times with more sort of continuity in diplomatic institutions and so forth, they might say, well, this is just an anomaly. Wait till the next election. We'll get normal president back in, or they'll sort of revert to type and respect, working through these international institutions, which the United States has been very successful gaming all of these, including the United Nations. And this is a source of U.S. power and wealth. It's just done differently through the institutions after the Second World War. But these foreign countries they're now thinking, why risk it? Trump might be gone in 3 years, but why risk doing any business or capitulating to the U.S. because they could just turn around and sting us in 2 years or another 4 years. And so why invest in this relationship? Why invest in the U.S. dollar as the world reserve currency if we're going to get stabbed in the back and get kneecapped by Washington? And Trump is going around kneecapping people. It's like what he's done is he's going to ultimately push people out of the dollar. The confidence in the dollar will be increasingly low. The currency itself is heading for the wall, okay, as is the U.S. economy. It's totally unsustainable. You can't delusional. You're not going to bring manufacturing jobs back to America because you can't support a manufacturing sector in a country where the minimum wage in order to make a living is sort of hovering somewhere between, $30 and $50 an hour. I mean, it's just stupid. Forget it. There's no manufacturing future for America at those levels. You've screwed yourself by pursuing the type of financial policies and practices that the United States has been doing for years. It's worked for a while, and it's worked for some people, but it ain't going to work forever. And it's not working now. And now you can see it. Trump cannot deliver on the Gilded Age. Forget it. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So what do you call it? Liberation Day. Liberation Day. Liberation from what?
Yeah.
Like, no one answered that question. What was the liberation from? Was it liberation from reality? Was that the liberation? Was it
What little savings people had left? I don't know.
Yeah, liberation
like
from stability. Liberation from stability. You liberate yourself from like economic stability. Yes, make America great. Fantastic. Really well done, guys. You're doing great. You really are outstanding. So I don't know. The trends are pretty obvious, Danny. You're seeing countries come together that have never come together and so deeply and committed to build economic futures and political futures and geopolitical cooperation on a level never seen before. And it's accelerated. And it's because of the last two presidents. And this one is really going to drive the stake home through the heart of the United States of America internationally. And he's doing it. I'm sad to say, but this will be Donald Trump's legacy by the end of it. And will he be so desperate as to launch a world war in order to divert from his epic failures or to stave off the inevitable collapse of a system that is already on its last legs? That's a legitimate question right now. We're talking about unstable things that are being said and done by this administration. They're saying some crazy and doing crazy things, and American people and our media and the political opposition can't somehow restrain or hold this White House accountable and limit the damage, then good luck in 2026. Is there some fairy dust that they're going to sprinkle? Is it going to make the economy good? Like, how does that work? Is Elon got robots that are going to come in and take over all the jobs, and then we could just sit back and collect UBI? Is that going to happen in 2026?
Right. Yep.
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think people should be ready for the time being until something significant changes about the United States in general, politically and economically. This is the trajectory. And Trump, in so many ways, when he was elected president, he was almost elected as the standard bearer of what he inherited, and what he's done and what his people have done is take that to now a newer, bigger and a newer level. And I think this is the direction. So when you said World War III to stave off or distract from the overall collapse, that's the path. The path is a big confrontation, as controlled as possible, but without, of course, any capacity to control for it. We have the U.S. about to pull out of the New START treaty. That's it. That's it. There's no more nuclear treaties left anymore.
No guardrails. The guardrails are gone.
None. And you have a War Department.
War Department.
Talking about no legality, ultimate lethality, prepare for war. And while the Trump administration has shown itself to be incredibly chaotic, and maybe we've kind of been saved somewhat by the chaos in terms of the potential for this kind of massive global conflagration. We shouldn't depend on that. We shouldn't depend on the overall weakness, the fecklessness, the incompetency. We can't depend on that, because it's not really even about that. It's about an overall system that he is essentially riding the wave on, and it's crashing very hard. That wave is crashing very hard on itself, and so we should be prepared for that, especially those of us in the West who are not going to be a party to the changing global alliances and the rising multipolar world. we won't be a party to that. We will have to take care of things where we are.
You know, if he came in, he's a second term president. If he came in, he's got a mandate, he'd be in a perfectly good position to say, right, we're going to have to raise interest rates. You got to get this under control. Food's too expensive, rent's through the roof. People can't afford the utilities. Basically, everyone's maxed out on credit card debt. We're gonna go hard. It's gonna be tough love. Raise interest rates as long as it takes. It has happened before in America. You know, George Bush Sr. interest rates during the late 80s, you know, in the teens. Okay, we survived, and many thrived, and many did well. People still bought houses, and still, you know, the property market still moved, and all those things happened. This president is wanting to cut interest rates. He's threatening the central bank head or the chairman, saying, "You're not doing what I told you. You want to cut interest rates because we want to put more heroin into the, financial amphetamines into the stock market." Okay, so that would be perfectly within his purview, and I don't think they'd be able to, the opposition Democrats wouldn't be able to roast him for it because the economy is in a dire state structurally. But that's not happened. You know, instead, and you know, the level of incompetency, you know what, this is, and I hate to draw it back to Israel, but if you look at the cabinet, and I made this point many times, but you have to reiterate this, the cabinet is full of Israel picks. Of Mary Madison's shortlist, the handpicked people from the Secretary of State right around the president. So a lot of these people who are, you know, foreign policy related, I don't know about, besides national security and foreign policy and state, I'm not, definitely all the ambassador positions that touch the Middle East or Israel. Their only skill set or identifiable traits are that they're going to do what's good for Israel. That's why they were handpicked, and Donald Trump basically abided by every single person on that short list. In fact, he gets calls about replacing them with people that aren't performing for Israel. That's known, okay? People being removed because they're not performing for Israel. So that means that all of the other areas of competency that someone in the government or the cabinet needs to be able to perform on, basically they're no good in any of these other areas, and they are largely incompetent because they're not selected for any of those skill sets. They're only selected for a very narrow remit, which is that they're going to do what's good for Israel. That's it. And that's a good percentage of the cabinet. This is a nightmare. Imagine if you ran a company like this and you selected all of your operations director, your CEO, all of these people based on one little narrow sort of thing. Did they like, you know, whatever, horses or ponies, or do they like Italian food or whatever? The company is going to crash and burn. That's the way the U.S. government is functioning right now. It's crashing and burning because they've allowed a foreign country and a well-financed foreign lobby to basically handpick half the government. That means they're going to fail on every other area of responsibility. But Israel doesn't care. Israel doesn't care about the conservatives, the right, the left. They know that if this fails, that they're going to buy the Democrats. Yep. And they're going to do exactly the same thing. They don't care about the conservative movement, about Trump, about the Republicans, and all these things that Mark Levine bangs on about. Constitutional conservative. They don't care about any of that because they own the left and the right. The lobby does. So they don't care if it all goes. They don't care if Donald Trump gets impeached. They don't care. If his approval ratings crater to 10%, he's been the best president for Israel in history. The lobby couldn't give a toss because he'll be replaced by a Democrat who is going to do what Israel wants. And now they've set the precedent that the lobby can shortlist the entire cabinet or most of it, all these key positions that have to do with security, foreign policy, with Israeli picks, loyalists, and the head of the Pentagon. Imagine that. Israel selected the head of the U.S. DOD, the Pentagon, and then got him to change it to the Department of War. This is a foreign country. This is a disaster for the United States. Do people realize what they're witnessing here? That you put somebody who is totally unqualified and the head of the biggest military in the world with no qualifications at all, that's handpicked and selected by a foreign lobby. I mean, think about that for a moment. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, this is one of those moments. They're already gearing up. The CIA, all these spooks, are already gearing up for their candidates to oppose to get out the MAGA seats, the GOP seats in the midterms, and they're all going to essentially be the spokespeople for that exact same Israeli lobby, come midterms. This is how it goes, because ultimately it's these types that see just the same vision. It's the same vision. It's all about how to maintain whatever they see as hegemony out there. And they see Israel as their only hope for that, and they're willing to go the distance for it in order to make that happen. And and that's exactly true. Not even the modicum of trying to keep what already is an incredibly unjust and unequal and corporate controlled system afloat, though even that arena is neglected. And that's what we basically have now, is the complete and total neglect of even just the modicum of governance to keep people afloat during this time. We saw that with the whole shutdown fiasco. But Patrick, we are out of time here. I have your Substack and 21st Century Wire in the video description, so I want people to check out your work there. Let me just check to see that's all there. Yes, it is. And anything else you want to say before we head out?
No, that's it. Thanks for the conversation. I wish it could be more positive, but I mean, anyway, hope for maybe something good will happen on the run up to Christmas, and we can have a better conversation in the future.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely be in touch soon, Patrick. We'll head off together. Everybody, at about 3:30 Eastern, 45 minutes, I'll be on Georgia Galloway's Moats, so be sure to tune in there. Without further ado, though, video description for Sevim's work as well as Patrick's, all of the places to support this channel, Patreon, Substack, and much more. You can also hit the like button so this video continues to go. That's the free way. That's the best way to support this channel. And then without further ado, Friday night, I will be on with Professor Jiang Shui-Qin. So tune in for that as our next show is on the way. I'll announce that very soon. Thank you to all the moderators. Thank you to, I think we have 2 new members. And thank you, Moffitt. And thank you, Empire We Are. And thank you, Farzana, for your support today. Without further ado, everyone, take care. Peace. I will see you soon.